And we're back online. This is the final and one of the best presentations that we have lined up for you. We're going to be discussing education through the lens of how it can be used. How AI can be used as a tool for humanizing liberal arts education. So we're going to give the mic over to Priten. He's going to give us a wonderful presentation, and then we're going to engage in some light Q&A. So Priten, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Perfect. Hi, everybody. I will largely be focusing on higher education today. But before I do, I want to warn you all that the word tool here is definitely meant to be a little misleading. And you'll see what I mean by that as I begin the presentation. Before I do, just a little bit more about me. I have a master's in education policy and management from Harvard, and a bachelor's in philosophy, which you're going to see reflected quite a bit. I also run pedagogy.cloud, which provides innovative tech solutions. We do everything from helping schools transition to online learning, to integrate AI into their LMS systems, to building mastery learning and standards-based learning systems. Last year, I authored AI and the Future of Education, Teaching in the Age of Artificial Intelligence, which is just about a little bit over a year old. And I'm also a lecturer at College Unbound, which focuses on adult learners, providing them a liberal arts education to help them finish their college degree here in the US. On the side, I'm also on the board of United for Social Change, a civics education nonprofit that focuses on bringing a liberal arts education into the K-12 space. So liberal arts is what is the mission of my work, and AI has recently been the tool. And so this is a great way for me to talk to you all a little bit about the intersection of both. So today I'll start by giving you a little bit of an introduction as to what kind of problem I'm trying to motivate by using AI as a tool, or for which I'm using AI as a tool, what opportunities and challenges that AI is inevitably going to bring into higher education, what higher education needs to do to respond to an AI world, and then I'm going to leave us all with an existential imperative and a conclusion on what this means for educators, probably at all levels and in all sectors. But before I get started, this is a case that really stuck out to me. There was a recent study published out of Alaska that showed that only 1/3 of Alaskan high school students are choosing to enroll in post-secondary schools. Most of them are able to find a career option that doesn't require a college degree. And so Alaska is full of job opportunities that require technical skills. And so they're able to either directly get to work or to take part in tech training or vocational training that gets them into the jobs that they want. A lot of these high schoolers, when they're interviewed, are explaining that they don't see the return on investment for time spent in higher education. As somebody who thinks about the liberal arts, as somebody who thinks about the importance of the liberal arts in terms of thinking about civic society and democracies, these types of statistics do scare me a little bit. But where does the AI and liberal art intersection come in? The first problem is that we're already starting to see even more pushback against the liberal arts because of AI. And so we're noticing folks ask questions like, why do we still have to write an essay? Why learn about poetry and history and sociology when these AI models can do a lot of that for us? And so an industry, a group of folks that as an industry, we already had a high bar to meet in terms of justifying to both our students and to society at large the importance of the liberal arts. That bar is getting higher and higher as the AI models get stronger. The second is that the challenges and opportunities that AI brings to our world are going to be best dealt with using skills that are brought in from liberal arts. And so if we want to prepare our societies, our citizens, to be able to deal with the new challenges that we hear about every day in the newspaper that are being brought up by AI technology, then we need to ensure that they have the liberal arts background to ask some of those deeper questions and navigate those complex dilemmas. So why else the liberal arts? There's plenty evidence from across different industries that a liberal arts education is effective for a whole host of reasons. There's like study after study from the business world showing that employers are starting to value liberal arts degrees. They find that those students are better able to communicate with their fellow employees. They're better at problem solving, problems on spot, and that they're much more self-solvers. They can critical think through any sort of problem that they're dealt with rather than having to continually rely on their higher-ups for the next step. The other thing that employers point out is that folks with a liberal arts background end up being a lot more adaptable, and the breadth of knowledge that they come in with helps them kind of adapt to whatever role they're thrown into, whatever new change their industry faces, and those kinds of skill sets are being valued by businesses. And so even if you're thinking about this from a purely economic standpoint, ensuring that students have these types of skill sets is a benefit for all of us, just in terms of thinking about what it means for careers long term. But of course, the bedrock of a liberal arts education is not for careers. It's to ensure that the civic societies that our students end up growing up into, they're effective participants within those. A liberal arts education has shown to be associated with increased civic engagement. Students who have college degrees are more likely to vote. They're more likely to participate in local politics, and they're more likely to have the important conversations with their peers and their neighbors about important issues that are facing both their local community and the larger society. They graduate with skills in ethical reasoning, they have an understanding of social responsibility, and they have the means to communicate those and understand the communication that's coming their way about these exact topics. The education also provides them with an understanding of the democratic principles and global perspectives on what a good society is, what has worked historically and what has not worked, what are the biggest challenges that our societies are facing, and how might we decide to tackle them, and who might be best equipped to tackle them. All of this means that a liberal arts education ends up being good preparation to create an informed and active citizenship in a diverse society. But even if you're not worried about democracy, the final thing is that any educator and anybody interested in the education system agrees that one of the key driving forces for an effective education system is that our students' well-being. And so when we see research on liberal arts education and happiness, on life satisfaction, on future personal growth, all of those point to the fact that students are able to find themselves more through a liberal arts education, enough to make the most of their lives later on. They're exposed to diverse perspectives, which allows them to hold deeper friendships, create new friends in a lifelong setting. They also learn more. They learn how to. They have more empathy, and they demonstrate more self-understanding. And all those relationships and support networks that they build in college end up both remaining with them throughout life, but also serving as a good test case for how they might form future ones as well. And all of this leads to a really deep sense of purpose for students, and it sets them up for lifelong learning. And so even if you're not convinced by the economic arguments, if you're not convinced by the civic arguments, if you're interested in the well-being of our students, we know that a liberal arts education is the best way to equip them to make sure that they grow up to be happy individuals. So what does that mean for educators and for those of us who are concerned with education? There's two questions that we have to focus on answering. And this is where I think AI is serving as an impetus for us to do a better job at answering these questions. These are not questions that are brand new. These are not questions that we've answered very successfully in the past, but these are questions that we will need to answer even more in the age of AI. And if we are equipped to do so, we might be able to overcome some of the barriers that we face as we try to ensure that every student has access to a liberal arts education. The first question is, what's the relevance of our curriculum? In the age of AI, we might tack on the age of AI qualifier, but really, what is the relevance of our curriculum and practice, and why are we teaching what we teach? And then, how do we convince students, parents, and society of their relevance? Oftentimes, scholars, researchers, they have an idea of the relevance of their work. They know why it's important. They know why they've devoted their lives to it. But that same message being communicated to both the students that are learning that material, to the parents who are funding that material or supporting their students through that, and for society that ends up also helping fund it and or support that. We need to do a better job of making sure that we can convince them that there is some relevance to the kinds of things that happen within liberal arts institutions. And so the next question we need to ask is, what does it mean to prepare students for an AI-driven world? And what do our students need to navigate not just their careers, but also their lives in an AI-driven world? And can we take these two questions, the question about what is the relevance of the materials that we've always taught, and the question about what students need long-term to navigate an AI-driven world? And is there some middle ground between those two that help us come up with some sort of answer and narrative that helps everyone involved? So the first is that I think that we have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity to recenter higher education onto the liberal arts. over the last few decades, we've seen a drifting away from the liberal arts, especially as the student loan crisis has gotten worse, especially as political norms have gotten different across the world. We've seen that liberal arts education as a whole has taken on a negative connotation. However, the bedrock of liberal arts education and the things that informed the initial impetus for building out a liberal arts curricula all still stand strong and stronger in the age of AI. And the first is building these interdisciplinary collaborations. And so making sure that the liberal arts are doing a good job of explaining where does AI fit into their research areas, where does AI fit into the work they do, and how might AI both inform that curriculum, but also how might that curriculum inform the world of AI. And I'll show some examples of that in a second. The second is that even if the content that we're teaching in higher education is relevant and is good, we still need to do a good job of making sure that we're innovating our pedagogy. And so one of the problems we often see in the higher education space is that there isn't a robust teacher training, there isn't robust conversations about pedagogy and student engagement and student learning. And that's starting to do a disservice as we see students start to disengage from their classrooms, as we see students take advantage of AI tools in order to cheat and plagiarize or not show up to class. And so ensuring that we're pushing the boundaries of what innovative teaching is at the higher education level to ensure that we continue to engage our students is going to be important. This includes everything from project-based learning, experiential learning, and even helping students connect the things that they're learning in the classroom to the community around them. To do all of this, we do have to spend a lot more time doing faculty development that goes beyond research. We need to spend time helping create cohorts of faculty who are discussing their teaching techniques, who are coming up with these innovative pedagogies, and who are collaborating on new classes and new ideas for how they might ensure that their students are prepared for a world of AI. While all this is happening, we need to be louder about what the value of a liberal arts education is to all the relevant stakeholders. Oftentimes, when a freshman in college, a first year in college, shows up at the university, they get one speech at the beginning of the year that tells them about, the importance of a well-rounded education, the importance of a liberal arts education, why they need to learn a little bit of math and a little bit of science and a little bit of English. And then those kinds of ideas are not communicated to them thereafter. And so students end up finding themselves ticking off boxes for whatever their general education requirements are. They find themselves concentrating on making sure that they can get the right GPA to get into the next path. But college ends up being a stepping stone towards the next path, rather than actually a path of a way of discovering something about them and their society. One of my favorite quotes that one of my professors had once told me was that any student who graduates a four-year university with a liberal arts degree ought to be able to open up any page of the New York Times or any local newspaper and kind of make sense of any section. So whether it be the music section, whether it be the science section, whether it be the business section, they should have at least the bedrock skills to kind of understand what is going on, what is being talked about, what vocabulary is being used, so that they are well informed enough to participate in larger society. But we also have the opportunity to start making sure that our students are prepared for this AI world. Most folks here don't disagree that AI is dramatically changing the current landscape of the world. But there are things that we can do in the higher education space that connect with basic things that we already do in order to ensure that the students are prepared to navigate these new challenges. And so while AI fundamentals like basic concepts about algorithms and machine learning techniques, what applications are there, those might still be relegated to the classrooms of computer science. There are definitely other ways that we can connect topics about AI into other subject areas. And so AI ethics is something that is extremely important for those who are building the future of AI to have a background in. And so moral philosophy classrooms, business classrooms, social classrooms, sociology classrooms, those are all great places to start having conversations about the impact of technology historically, about what the impact of technology ought to be going forward. One of the conversations that we've been having a lot with science teachers is that when we think about the scientists that we're building, we have to keep in mind that those students are the ones who are building this future AI technology or whatever future technology there is. And oftentimes when we talk about the risks of AI and we talk about the doomsday scenarios of what can happen as technology gets stronger and stronger, there's this assumption that it's inevitable, that it will always get there. It will eventually cause harm to humans. But if we integrate these sorts of lessons and ethics earlier, we have the chance to inform the humans that are building the technology to be better builders of this technology in ethical and moral ways. The other way is that in other classrooms that don't directly deal with AI or the implications of AI policy, it is possible to put all those AI tools into context. And so, in a history classroom, using AI to go back and analyze and synthesize information to do research quicker, those kinds of ways are start to help students see the potential for AI technology. In cultural and political perspectives as well. These are all classrooms where students can find ways to use AI in productive ways rather than just using it as a way to get away with workload. But professors and instructors need to do the legwork here of explaining how is a historian at a museum using AI right now to help reconstruct something. How are cultural institutions trying to increase their reach towards their populations using AI? What about in the political system? How are political systems and bureaucracies using AI to make their work more efficient or to pass new legislation? Or what legislation is being passed about AI? Those kinds of questions can happen in those classrooms as a way to show students that this work is still relevant and ever more important in the future. The final is that we need to make sure that our students are prepared to be lifelong learners. And this is a cliche term that is thrown out a lot. But as we think about the trajectory of careers in the last few years, as we hear about the trajectory of careers from folks who are innovating in the AI space, and as we talk to folks who are already dealing with the repercussions of not having the skills to quickly navigate changes, we know that students will need the ability to pick up new careers, to become better at whatever career that they're currently in, or to completely scrap everything and start again. And in order to do that, they need learning skills that they can take beyond the classroom and beyond a standardized testing format, beyond a let me turn in this essay for this class format, and actually, how do I learn something because it's important to me mindset. And that is a mindset that we find students struggle with within the higher ed space. So, what does it mean to respond to an AI world largely within our classrooms? So what is changing about the world? And I've kind of hinted at some of these things, so I won't belabor the point. But careers are changing, civic society is changing as public discourse changes. Even in recent elections all around the world, we're seeing the increase of AI for misinformation. We're seeing the increase of AI for targeted advertising. All those things will kind of continue to influence all different sectors. AI is changing how human relationships work. More communication is taking place over AI. We're sending emails using AI. We're getting our text messages synthesized by Apple's AI. Social interactions are changing as folks meet in the metaverse or have conversations mediated by more technology. And so all of these things are changing how we interact with our fellow humans. And of course, education as a whole is changing when we think about what kinds of things need to be taught, but also how are students learning and how are they being assessed. And those are conversations that educators all around the world are currently having, is figuring out how exactly this education needs to respond because AI is challenging our traditional norms of education. And some of the conclusions that they've come up with in terms of what needs to change are that we need to be more interdisciplinary. The problems that AI bring up are not unique to any one curriculum. These are not relegated to science disciplines or just relegated to philosophers, but the kinds of problems that AI brings up are ones that are best dealt with collaboration between disciplines. And so we need to ensure that our students are building some of those skill sets earlier so that they know that these subjects do not lie in silos in the real world, but that when they solve a problem in the real world, they'll have to grasp onto some of their math knowledge, grasp onto some of their rhetorical skills, and grasp onto their understanding of science in order to come up with a solution. We also need to make sure that we continue to focus on human relationships with our students. Make sure that our students understand what it means to have a relationship with another human being, that they understand what their interpersonal skills, that they build emotional intelligence, and that they have the ability to do some ethical reasoning, that they can think about what is right, what is wrong, from what they've been told or beyond what the law says, but really think about it in a nuanced way in terms of what is their role in society and what kind of a place do they want to build. We also need to make sure that the actual value of education continues to be explained to students and to parents. There's large pushback currently coming out against the traditional norms of education. There's content areas that are being called irrelevant. There's assignment types that are being called irrelevant. And all of those kinds of things, we need to do a better job of explaining why it is relevant. It is our job to explain to folks what is the importance of still writing an essay. Why would you still want to learn how to do some research when AI systems can do it for you? What is the point of still being able to synthesize information when AI can do that? What is the point of writing basic code when most basic code can be written by an AI system? And while to most folks in those fields, those answers are obvious, those answers are not obvious to the larger public. And so we need to do a better job of making sure that we communicate to everybody why we need to ensure that students are still learning those. And like I said, we need to make sure that we continue to integrate AI literacy so that whatever careers that our students choose, they know how they'll make use of the AI tools, but also how they might be able to be better than those AI tools within those industries as well. So what are a couple of ways that we can talk to our students about this? The first is that we frame AI as a tool to enhance and not replace human capabilities. Right now, the large number of conversations that we have with students, especially in the K-12 setting, is that this AI tool can do it for me and thus I don't have to do it. And this is where I think having conversations with students earlier on about what role does AI play in their production process? What role does their own work play? Why should they still produce some work of their own? And how might those two work symbiotically is going to be important as students have greater and greater access to AI, but also greater and greater access to stronger AI. The second is we need to challenge human stupidity. Across the world, we see all sorts. If you're sitting on the news, you see all sorts of instances of lack of critical thinking, of lack of media literacy, and irresponsible use of AI and other technologies. And this is a moment to talk to our students about here's what happens when we don't build the media literacy skills that we need. Here's the kinds of misinformation people fall for. Here's the kinds of things that people don't think through before they act. Here's what kinds of harm this causes when we don't think through and we don't use our thinking to make sure that we avoid those harms. And all in all, when we talk to our students, we need to make sure that we're not overemphasizing the benefits of AI and making it seem like this new thing that's going to change our lives all for the better, because we know that there's lots of risks that it brings up. But also make sure that we do discuss some of those benefits so that students understand that there's ways that they can take advantage of it, that we don't seem like the naysayers who are just ignoring the technology as a whole, but really help them understand that here's ways that AI could bring some risks, could bring some benefits. Here's how you might make decisions that would increase the benefits instead of the risks, and help them have those conversations both in the classroom and outside the classroom. And then, of course, continue to make sure that students understand why what they're learning in the school setting is not a one and done. I'm going to turn it in for this class and be done with it type of an assignment, but really is going to support them long term. While we discuss those ways that we can continue to innovate within the education space and continue to talk to our students more effectively, there are a few concerns that I'll just highlight that we want to be careful about, especially in the higher ed level. And so I'm particularly worried about echo chambers when we're producing content using AI, when students are speaking to AI for debates, for Socratic dialogues. All of those things are risky if we're not very careful about ensuring that diverse perspectives are still shown in these different systems that they're using, that the students are still asking open questions, seeking information from different perspectives, and not just thinking that this one AI tool that they're using is the end all be all and has all the right answers and represents all beliefs. We will want to continue to be careful about data privacy. We could spend quite a bit of time just talking about that. But just in general, we want to be careful about what data is sent to these to various AI companies and what the potentials for breaches or misuse are. We want to be careful about bias within these systems. There's plenty of documented bias in every single AI algorithm that's come out, from gender bias to race bias to socioeconomic bias. And when we bring things like that into our classroom, we want to make sure we're having open conversations with both our students and ourselves about what exactly that bias means for what we're teaching and how we might avoid that. We also want to be careful that the literacy gaps that already exist globally don't get worse. And so tech literacy gaps are already really high. Access to devices is unequal across the country. And we're already starting to see some wealthier school districts in wealthier nations have much more exposure to AI tools and learning AI skills versus those without the same resources, still having AI bans in place, not being allowed to use AI. And that is creating literacy gaps in terms of for a skill set that will be important long-term for whatever career paths students choose. The final is that plagiarism crisis will continue to get worse. I know for any educator in the room, that was the first concern that came up. And we want to be careful to ensure that we're giving our students a clear message about what the importance of academic integrity is, building assessments that avoid plagiarism using AI, but also helping students make those decisions for themselves about when AI is helping them and when it is hurting them. I'm going to go ahead and skip this last slide just so that we have a couple of seconds for questions, but the slides are there. The larger point is that if we don't meet these challenges, if we don't do the kinds of things that I've been talking about, the kinds of trends that we're already seeing taking place in education and especially higher education are going to get worse. We're seeing decline in support for liberal arts programs. Funding is going down. We're seeing students not attending higher education at the same levels, and students are not engaged when they are attending. We're seeing public trust in our higher education systems get eroded, which is decreasing investment, which is decreasing the number of students who actually think of it as something legitimate, as a source of information, as a source of growth. And folks are starting to think that AI can replace these sorts of institutions, and other technologies can replace these sorts of institutions. And so we need to do a good job of explaining why the human context of an education system is also very important. Perfect. I'll leave the rest of the slides in there, but my email is prein@pedagog.ai. So if folks have other questions or comments, this is a very large topic to quickly cover in half an hour, so I have lots to say about this, but I'm happy to speak more about it with anybody who's interested further. And we have a plethora of resources tackling AI in education from all sorts of angles that are available.
Ethan, thank you very much for giving us this presentation. It's deceptive how much information you packed into this. Not even 30 minutes. It was like 20 something minutes. You just jammed it all in there, but it was very easy to absorb. So thank you very much for putting it all together. I strongly believe, and I hope that this event is proof of that we have to be able to communicate fresh, diverse perspectives to develop a well-rounded view of this particular subject, AI. Right? People say AI, but there's a multitude of minutia that needs to be explored underneath what that really means. And as you said very, very clearly, and as I learned in my early in my career, writing is a form of crystallizing thought. If we can't write, we won't be able to communicate with each other. We won't be able to plan, integrate learnings and experiences, or even reflect on where we want to go or what we're doing with our lives. So very well said. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Are there any, through your company, what is it that you're doing to sort of infuse this in industry?
Yeah, so a lot of the work we do right now is teacher development. One of our biggest concerns is that is substantially unequal across the country. So we go around, we ensure that teachers are understanding what sorts of AI tools their students are already using, how they might need to be able to use it or talk about it within their classrooms, and kind of giving them that skill set to kind of navigate the changes. Because you'll be surprised that the number of students, you won't be surprised, but the number of students who are using and exposed to AI technology is substantially higher than that of teachers. And so that's definitely predominantly our focus right now, is making sure that teachers catch up to their students so that the system can adapt along with it.
And are you also taking into consideration the regulatory compliance requirements that are coming into the fold for education?
Yeah, so we're keeping an eye on it. Unfortunately, most of our work is in the U.S., where those kinds of regulations are substantially slower. We're offering international guidelines as a template for schools who want to implement their own sorts of metrics for some of these things, because those are necessary. And when you don't have that top-down guidance the way some other regions of the world do, a lot more is left even to individual teachers, let alone districts. And so we try to provide those kinds of examples that exist globally, because there are some good examples of holding AI companies accountable for everything from the bias to their data sets to the implications of what it produces.
Now, you're saying you're predominantly operating in the U.S. Are you mainly engaging with higher education?
Or we do everything. We do K-12, higher education, and we even do grad school. So we work with educators at all levels.
Any particular insights that you're deriving from on-ground implementation?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is that the conversations are not happening, and I know that's a simplistic maybe sounds simplistic, but that's the scariest part to me, is that all of these folks are kind of interacting with these technologies on their own, but students aren't able to navigate the conversation with their teacher about what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, when is it cheating, when am I just kind of using this for learning. Teachers don't feel comfortable enough yet to actually talk to their students about it and say, hey, this is okay, this is not okay, this new thing exists, because they don't have the background knowledge to do any of that. And then we see administrators just wait and say, okay, we'll make a decision when this thing slows down, but it's not slowing down. And so my hope is that more folks can start having conversations about what this means for education in all the different ways that are right. Like, I mean, just like the way it changes education kind of happens on multiple different axes. And if we start talking about even one or two of those, I think folks will be better off. But right now, everybody's kind of pretending like it's hush hush in the education world, and that's doing a massive disservice to everybody involved.
I like how you said it's very simple, and then you gave me every reason for it not to be simple.
Yeah.
But it seems like the perfect storm, and I'm sure you're having a hand at making a difference. I really appreciate you coming to this platform and sharing your thoughts, and I hope others can continue the conversation with you and expand further on this topic. So
absolutely, I'm looking forward to hearing from other folks.
Thank you guys for attending the Responsible AI Summit. With this, we will conclude presentations. Everything will be recorded and available on the platform for several months. So if you didn't get to catch up on all these sessions, you're free to go back as you please throughout the weekend and so forth. Thank you.